So as you start seeing here, we are rolling out the new building blocks in the UI. This has been a large initiative on our team to basically empower our developers to actually use it when they're baking things. Versus it being bottlenecked by our previous smaller UI team. There you go. We introduced space stations around orbit, around the planets. They will have hubs and basically other shops and all of that. So that will roll out with 3.8. So every planet, Lorville, ArcCorp, Microtech, and then obviously we have Port Alisar.
Yeah, this is Port Tressler, which is the orbital station around Microtech. One of the big things that we're rolling out with 3.8 is Procedural Planet Tech V4, which is pretty amazing.
One of the first things that you'll see is now we have what we're calling large-scale terrain shadows. So what this means is, even from space, you'll see terrain formations like a mountain cast like long, beautiful shadows across the landscape.
Down over the top.
Also, here, we knew we was going to do a cold planet. We thought it'd be really good to have a frozen ocean. So this was a brand new shader that we put into development. And what we have right now is it's physicalized, so we can walk and drive on it.
The planet, we call it the room system, basically, and the room system allows us to have humidity.
But it can be a planet system.
Yes, but it's a planet system.
Basically an environment container.
So it allows us to do precipitation now, or humidity based, and it's all systemic. So if it's a humid planet, then you'll get precipitation on the cockpit or on your visor. Or
yeah, and it will also affect things like the contrails and the effects. And it's all tied in, which later on today we'll show more of. It's like you don't see repetition of biomes, you don't see, I mean, it just seamlessly from the outside in, it's just smooth, it's pretty awesome. We've been sort of working on the flight experience, and that's an ongoing project for the combat and the flight experience. But one thing that we'll roll out in 3.8 is what we call the look-ahead setup for the cockpit. So if Glenn is flying around here, what we do is we actually take notice of where the velocity vector of the ship is going to be, where the horizon line, if you're on a planetary body, if in space, obviously you wouldn't worry about that, and also if you had a selected target, and the view basically gets sort of biased towards that. And so as you're flying around, you'll feel the cockpit move around you, and it's quite similar if you see people fly like Tarada does, really cool flying, and he's got head tracking on, right? And you can see pilots generally look where they're going, and also if you're a racing car driver, you look where you're going. And so that's kind of the idea here, rather than having a very static, fixed view. You can, of course, turn it off if you don't like it, but we think it gives a much more fluid experience. We've also been working on the chase camera stuff, so there'll be more fluid vehicular chase camera. You'll see it here, you'll see it a bit later on. Generally, that's sort of stuff that we're continually working on.
Also, another interesting thing is this planet data is also being utilized for things like game logic, VFX, things like that.
Yeah, well, the VFX is determined by the biome and the environmental data, so you'll get mists rolling over mountains,
correct,
depending on the atmosphere and the biome data. So it's all very procedural.
We wanted to remove these big walls we had to previously build around these landing zones. So when you look down there, you can land there. A lot of you asked me previously, is like, why can't we land there? So that's been a huge initiative.
Well, we're also for 3.8 significantly improving the no-fly zone and how you visualize into it. So we won't have like this big ugly mesh that just gets in the way and blows you up. So I think that will help in most locations.
Here you can see one of the signature buildings of New Babbage. This is what we're calling the Aspire Grand. Good job, Glenn.
See if we can get through that. Fancy dancy.
Woohoo! One interesting.
And the Aspire Grand is probably where, if you were starting on New Babbage,
yes,
one of the places you would have your hab. We will, not necessarily with 3.8, but we're going to start transitioning next year towards having people start on the various planets versus start on Port Alisar. So you sort of will choose your home base, whether it would be Hurston or Microtech or Crusader, or Area, or ArcCorp, and then that would be sort of your starting base in terms of playing the game.
And we also understand that you want to get in and out very quickly, so again, that's why we're putting hubs in the space stations around, so then you can stay there, you can get in and out very quickly.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. So in spaceports, we will have like motels in airports. We'll have that as an option when you land or not, and then also you can have your sort of permanent apartment in the city, so to speak, and then you just pick where it is.
Here we are, one space as promised.
So we've been working on our comms calls internally to get what we would consider a gold standard on that, and then we will slowly roll that out to every.
So just one thing to note on 3.8. So I'm not sure I mentioned this, but Microtech will be there. And actually, when we roll out V4, we had to redo every single planet and every single moon. So we did that actually in 2 months, which is a testimony of how quicker the workflow is. So not only is the quality better, but the workflow is much better, because we basically redid everything. It took us about 2 years and 2 months, which is a really good sign for the future and creating more content. But in 3.8, we will have Microtech, but New Babbage itself won't be available internally. It will be there externally, and then in 3.9, the full of New Babbage will be there, where you can go and visit the various areas of it.
So as Chris mentioned, New Babbage is going to be our first landed zone where we're not building it in the utilitarian art style. Previously, we've made things like outposts in the high-tech art style, but this is our first opportunity to build a landing zone from scratch. So what you're seeing here is a kind of a glimpse at what the inside of New Babbage will feel like.
Hi, is there something I can help you with?
So this is our Cortina-like Microtech.
Yes,
the greeter.
Here's a funny joke. What do you call a mobile risk computational unit that is completely made out of helium? Moby gas.
So this is how you would access the garages that we have, so you can drive around the city and drive around the planet.
Over here. And so one thing that we'll get into later, but we have the player status system is now extending beyond oxygen into temperature. As you can see that it's cold. I don't know if you noticed, but we are actually have breath coming out of our mouth.
Did not work.
And if you want to look around your third person, we can sort of see you breathing, I guess.
So another big thing that was just seen was basically AI transitioning from one zone to another zone.
It's cold.
Yeah.
See, he should be wearing his nice warm. All right, let's get on, Glenn. But yeah, so like Todd was saying, it's early stages yet, but we have AI transitioning between zones and grids, nav meshes. So theoretically, you can have an AI a whole group of AI fly in, land, a whole bunch of troops get out, say the back of a cutlass as reinforcements.
Correct.
In a combat, and you fight, which is something we haven't been able to do up to date. So it's really quite cool. And this is actually an AI-flown ship that's taking us on a shuttle towards a research facility. And we're slowly working on aspects of the gameplay, in terms of, say, the feel of flight or the feel of combat. This is what's coming up next. So in 3.8, we are going to have the very first iteration of server-side OCS. And you guys didn't know it because we didn't want to spoil the thing, but the demo we ran this morning was running it, and what we're running right now is running SOCs, and you'll understand why it's important as we get into the demo. So it's the first iteration of the server-side OCS. So we have server persistence in the session of the server. So the server, whenever it leaves an area, it streams stuff out. It remembers the state of all the items and all the stuff that was there at that time, but it doesn't persist beyond the server session. The bigger thing, which we've talked about in the future, is sort of the iCache, which is the full persistence. So platform persistence is one other thing that we're putting in the 3.8, which is is basically a halfway house to the very full persistence, but the platform persistence is going to allow us to save off the alpha UEC that you've earned. Also, any items or ships that you've bought or rented in the game are going to... So they're going to get saved off to the platform in the same way that we record all your shop cash purchases. And so when a new release comes, we can re-entitle it back to the account in the same way we do for everything that you do. And the plan with that is to not have to wipe between iterative releases on a major release, and potentially even from one release to the next. And we do reserve the right if there's like a major issue or a major rebalance, or we have to redo the database on a major release, then at that particular time we may have to wipe it. But in general, the goal is to let you guys make money in the game, earn things, collect things, and not have it wiped every time we do a new release. And now, Planetech V4, which we obviously sort of unveiled at the beginning, and there was some really cool panels about it during the day, which I think is going to, just the quality of, not just Microtech, but going back to the old places like Daymar or Cellen is a whole new world. More robust missions. So we've got some stuff coming up in 3.8 that is interesting. There's we're starting to introduce AI into some of the missions, like say the rescue the hostage on the 890, which we had in an ATV. We were showing a very early version of it that will be in 3.8, and there'll be some other ones along that line of missions, and that's multi-part missions, which also what we're showing is sort of an early version of a multi-part mission, what we showed at the beginning and we're going to end with here, that 3940 onwards. But if we actually take a look outside, the other thing that we're showing here is dynamic weather.
Yes.
And so actually there is a ground snowstorm blowing in. So if you take a look, if we go take a look out here, it's where the trees, go to the left a little bit. Should be, I think. There, so you can see. So, all right, we carry on. So there's a storm blowing in right now. Come to that in a bit better. But the weather simulation takes into account the humidity,
yes,
the wind, temperature.
Yes,
right?
All of that.
And it is dynamic. So it's set up. So not going to have. We've got a couple elements still to come on the fully dynamic planetary weather, which would be volumetric planetary crowds and volumetric ground fog. We have a large amount of the pieces in place for our weather sims, and so we want a sort of combination of sort of the procedural dynamic stuff that would be, yes, generated by the universe simulation that Tony was showing earlier, plus some more crafted, multi-stage, kind of more narrative missions, yes, and they all get mixed in to give you a really sort of nice flavor and variety of things to do. The personal inner thought is in 3.9, which allows you to access a whole bunch of actions or interactions that are sort of on you or would be your thoughts. And again, this is building block UI, right?
Yes,
so
yes,
that's all put together by a designer fairly quickly without having to have Flash programmers or... Okay. Let's get it.
So we have non-lethal takedowns now.
Okay, let's get out. Yeah, it's part of that. So melee combat does ship, yes, with 3.8, yes, and it's a lot more than just that, but it's non-lethal takedowns. You'll be able to fight.
To knock people out.
Knock people out, get into fisticuffs. There's a whole sort of different levels of punch, left, right, block, left, right. It's all actually physically based. It's actually, you are seeing some of the stuff because this is in server OCS, so we don't have everything all the time now. So when things go in and out, we've still got edge cases, and that's one of the issues that we have to fix before server OCS haven't, but it'll be fine. Show off, Glenn. All right.
Good job, Glenn.
Yeah. I remember when it was almost impossible to get a rover into a ship, but now we can do it. It's great. All right, come on.
So this is our first iteration of ship AI in atmosphere.
Yeah. So we are being tailed by Microtech security because they figured out that we've stolen the data and we're making a getaway. Yeah, you can actually see a snowstorm in the distance there in the background as we're leaving. That was where we came from. Yeah, there you go, show it off, there you go. And this is in the volumetric cloud, the space cloud tech that we have. Same stuff that we're using for Squadron 42 for the coil, but as you can see, usable everywhere else. It's completely volumetric lit in, and it's beautiful. And here we're at the jump point to the Pyro system. Now, you don't necessarily need infrastructure for jump points, but the more traveled ones are the ones that used to be traveled, which Pyro used to be, but not particularly anymore, have what we call jump rings around them, and they help stabilize the jump point to make for a smoother jump. If you don't have one, then it's more difficult, and the entrance is harder or difficult. But sometimes you may want to try a sort of side jump point to get into a system, like if you're a smuggler, because the main ones would be more, essentially, they are like a checkpoint. It's like going through a border patrol or something.
It is basically a port. So when we're building the solar system, one of the things that we think about are entrances for obviously economy reasons, and you saw that with Tony Z's talk of way to interject new things into the solar system. So around the Stanton jump points, the three major ones, we will have space stations, so that you can go and travel, and let's say you had a long jump point and you want to stop and basically drop something off there,
or refuel,
or do whatever you need to do. So we will have space stations around those jump points that you can go and interact with.
And this is essentially sort of the infrastructure you occasionally would, you can have around. Some places would have bigger stations, but as I said, the Pyro route isn't a very particularly well-traveled one.
Points of interest.
Do you guys think we should open it?
Yes.
I think we should go. Let's do it. That's actually a super cool view. You see that one?
Oh yeah.
Great.
How good that is. That looks awesome.
Yeah. All three look good.
Okay. Okay, so we are now in the Pyro system, and we streamed out Stanton as we were traveling, and streamed in Pyro. The other side, by the way, has got an awesome light on the side. Yeah.
Set a route to the ruin station, Sam. There we go.
There we go.
All right, Ian. Hit it.
Anyway, so in this coming year, we were sort of showing you what we're going to do. So we are going to have the Pyro system next year. Obviously, that brings in jump points. We're going to have dynamic weather. We're going to be, Microtech, you're going to get the planet itself in 3.8, but we'll be opening up new Babbage in 3.9. We've got moons of Microtech that come in, I think, in 3.9 too. And we'll be continuing on the development of SOCs and the iCache and the persistence, and it's pretty damn exciting. It's kind of coming together, and at the detail that I didn't think anyone thought would be possible. So, hopefully you guys liked it.